MegaHerzzz. You're listening to MegaHerzzz on 4ZZZ.
You're listening to MegaHerzzz here on 4ZZZ. My name is Charlotte and my pronouns are she, they. And yeah, I'll be joining you solo again here today. We are 4ZZZ's feminist and social justice show, covering local issues and events and showcasing women and femme-led music. I would just like to start off by acknowledging the Jagera and the Turrbal peoples as the sovereign owners of the unceded land on which we live and broadcast here today. This week is NAIDOC week, and we would like to especially acknowledge and celebrate the ongoing strength, wisdom and excellence that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people show every single day. We stand in solidarity with all First Nations peoples in the fight for justice. Today on the show, once again, it's just me here today. So I'm going to be talking a little bit about NAIDOC and some upcoming NAIDOC events that are happening around Brisbane. And then I'm going to do a little dive into the recently released Queensland Budget through a gendered lens, sharing some words from QCOSS. And then sharing a little bit more events and, our ongoing Femicide Report, where we share women who have been killed throughout the week. I'm going to talk a little bit about NAIDOC Week. So this week is National NAIDOC Week. Celebrations are held across Australia in the first week of July each year to celebrate and recognise the history, culture and achievements of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. NAIDOC Week is an opportunity for all Australians to learn about First Nations cultures and histories and participate in celebrations of the oldest continuing living culture on Earth. This year, the theme is 50 Weeks of Deadly, so they are celebrating 5 incredible decades of NAIDOC, which is just crazy to me. I think that is such a wonderful achievement and such a really great anniversary to reach. The official NAIDOC website says about this theme. They say it's about the future, the next 50 years, the young ones growing up proud, the return of language, the return to country, the fight for justice continuing with new tools, new voices, and the same fire. I think that's really beautiful, celebrating 50 years that have been and looking to the future of the next 50 years. You can support your local Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities through activities and events held across the country. Just in Brisbane, we've got a few different ones coming up. So 4ZZZ actually are hosting a NAIDOC 2026 50 Years of Deadly car park gig this Saturday. So that is from 12 to 4 p.m. at the 4ZZZ car park. The event will commence with a Welcome to Country and featuring performances from Ariana Busker, Jarzen, Feet Soldiers, and Bala Rontu. Really great artists there. And the 4ZZZ program's Soldier Sisters and Indigibriz will be bringing the vibes with food and refreshments available. There are also other NAIDOC events happening throughout the week that you can check out. So I'll actually be at the Anala NAIDOC Family Fun Day on Wednesday, the 8th of July. That one's hosted from 10 to 2 at CJ Greenfield, which I think is in Durack. That's always a really fun, really great, massive event. Performances, all that kind of stuff. And then the Musgrave Park Family Fun Day is on Friday, the 10th of July from 9 to 5 p.m. Both of those events are really great if you've got little ones to bring along. Like, they've always got rides and performances and food and, little different kids' activities and all that kind of stuff. So, you should absolutely head along. I think it's so important to celebrate NAIDOC and, our wonderful communities that we've got here in Brisbane. So in this next little segment, a couple of weeks ago I promised a little dive into the recently released Queensland Budget, kind of looking at it through a gendered lens and considering how it affects women and girls in Queensland. So in the 2026 to 2027 budget, some of the new initiatives specific to women include $18.9 million from 26 to 27 for Victim Assist Queensland to continue supporting victims of crime, $11 million over 5 years and $2.4 million per year on going to appoint additional Supreme and District Court judges to address increasing demand to deliver faster access to justice for victims and to facilitate the expeditious finalisation of civil matters. $6 million over 4 years and $1.8 million per year ongoing for the delivery of enhanced security across priority courthouses in Queensland to improve the safety of victims and the community. And finally, $4 million over 2 years to support women re-entering into the workforce and thriving after career breaks. So this goes to Jobs Academy, including women's carers grants, particularly for women living in regional, rural and remote areas. So these sound great, these initiatives, but what does it actually kind of mean for women in Queensland? So I've looked to QCOSS's analysis of the budget, and I'm going to share what they've said about the report. I'm not a budget policy expert, so yeah, QCOSS, or the Queensland Council of Social Services, is Queensland's peak body for the social service sector. They work to create positive change through their work in advocacy, policy development, and engaging with communities and the social service sector. A big part of this, I think, is their analysis and advocacy around budgeting. They always do really, I think, easy to understand, really broken down and really thoughtful and critical analysis of the budgets. They do, like the Australia one and, focus on Queensland ones as well. I've looked to they've got a special analysis of the whole budget, and I'm kind of looking at their specific section on women and girls in Queensland and how the budget affects women and girls. So QCOSS says, QCOSS welcomes additional investment in victims assist services and investment in initiatives to improve safety and the expeditious finalisation of matters. However, the 2026 to 2027 budget includes minimal additional investment in women's equality and domestic and family and sexual violence related measures. So they say, we are concerned funding for the Housing Connectors program, which supports victim survivors of domestic and family and sexual violence to manage their safety and access housing, has not been continued. We encourage the Queensland Government to maintain investment in programs of this nature to support the safety and well-being of domestic and family violence victim survivors who have high support needs. QCOSS have also advocated for additional investment in critical frontline DFE services. More funding for women's equality and domestic violence measures is needed to address gender inequality in Queensland. The Queensland Government's 2025 Women's Economic Security and Wellbeing Report cites that a 12.6% pay gap between Queensland women and men working full-time, so this is a larger gap than the national average. Queensland women earn about $250 a week less on average than men. A 19% superannuation balance gap between women and men, with 15.4% of Australian women retiring with no personal income. It's really high. Women and girls make up the majority of Australians living in poverty. Just over 1/4 of Queensland women feel safe walking alone in their local area after dark. And 9 in 10 victims of sexual abuse in Queensland are women and girls. So that's what was addressed in the 2025 Women's Economic Security and Wellbeing Report. This basically demonstrates, I think, that, gender equality is still obviously a massive, massive issue in our country, and we really need to do more and I think demand more of our government to address it. So QCOSS also says that women and girls make up more than 50% of the population. However, gender inequality continues to fuel unacceptable negative impacts on women's safety, health and economic security. The national crisis of violence against women must be addressed by evidence-based strategies and programs. Anything less risks discrimination and gender inequality becoming more entrenched, driving up violence and misogyny. QCOSS encourages the Queensland Government to progress a commitment to foster an environment that enables women's economic security and to develop and implement a women's economic security strategy. I think that's a really great suggestion from QCOSS there. I think, unfortunately in the environment that we're in, I believe that unless we have really targeted and specific evidence-based strategies, then the government kind of doesn't see things as a priority. So I think, implementing a women's economic security strategy would be a really great idea in addressing some of those issues that we talked about, like, the pay gap, superannuation balance gap. So QCOSS also says we support implementation of a strategy that is designed with input from the community service sector. It should include objectives to address gender inequality for cohorts most likely to experience inequality, including funding to build the current capacity of community services that assist women and girls who are Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander, culturally and linguistically diverse, from LGBTQIA plus sister girl and brother boy communities, older women, women and girls with disability, women who have been or who are incarcerated, and those from regional, rural, remote and very remote Queensland. We've got a little text in from a listener saying that's interesting about the poverty rate. I thought most homeless Australians were men. I think, and don't quote me on this, I haven't done research before seeing your text, but I believe the research that I've been looking at over the past few weeks is that the fastest rising group of homeless people are older women. So I think it's a lot of women kind of who are in the older ages possibly haven't had access to super, if they raised kids in, the 90s kind of things, they didn't have access to super. They, possibly have been out of the workforce for a really long time. And then if those women are elderly and getting divorced, they now are kind of left in these positions with, not having access to any super in their retirement. And if you didn't already own a house or if you've been renting your whole life, then you become really susceptible to homelessness quite quickly. With no other way basically to earn income as an older woman. So that's, Thomas, I think that is probably what that's indicating. Is that the more recent research is indicating that, women are sort of entering that poverty. And with the rates of domestic violence in this country, I think that a lot of the women in those relationships also don't have access to personal income. And if they choose to leave, then, are left basically with nothing and, the clothes on their back and their kids basically. So, I think that is probably what indicates that poverty rate. Thomas, thank you for texting in. Thank you. So to finish off that little section, QCOSS says, to address domestic and family and sexual violence, QCOSS encourages the Queensland Government to continue to fund measures to implement the Women's Safety and Justice Task Force recommendations, which you can look up. It's a quite extensive document with a lot of, I think hundreds of recommendations that you can find really accessibly on the internet. I recommend you read through that. They also recommend to provide funding to establish a standalone First Nations domestic family sexual violence peak in Queensland to help achieve closing the gap targets, and recognises that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples experience violence with unique social, political and historical contexts and their human right to self-determination. And finally, to ensure that each domestic family sexual violence service in Queensland is resourced to help every victim survivor that requires help. This includes in regional, rural, remote and very remote communities where the cost of supporting victim survivors can be exponentially more, with some services needing to drive many hours or fly to reach victim survivors. I think those are all, really great recommendations. And as we kind of hear, time and time again on this show, the rates of violence against women are, it's happening all the time. I think the rates at the moment are one woman every 5 days are getting murdered. So, it definitely requires really big investments from both the state government and the federal government. But I think if we're talking about Queensland women, the state government definitely needs to do more, I think. And whilst, I welcome that they have put some initiatives in and indicated some money will be allocated towards these issues, I think, we always need more. And, there's a few other areas in the budget that I think possibly we could be taking money from, that $7.2 billion going towards creating a new Olympic stadium, I think could possibly be redistributed elsewhere to support women and girls who really need it. Thank you everyone who's listening. The time really flies by when I'm on this show. Alrighty, so we are going into the Violence and Femicide Report. Once again, this content is, distressing sometimes, and contains discussions that are emotionally charged. So please take care of yourself by either tuning out for a couple minutes or seeking support if necessary. So actually, once again this week, we actually have no reported murders of women that I've seen, unless something's happened in the past 40 minutes. I think that's the second time in a few weeks that's happened, which is, I think, good to hear. We never know. There's possibly some unreported things that haven't come out yet, but, it is always good to share news like that, I guess, even though it's a pretty low bar to have, but, it's always good to celebrate when it is. I do want to share the name and details of a previously unnamed woman who was killed last week. So we didn't have her name when we reported on this last week, so I want to share it now. So that woman was Mallory Jane Roberts. Mallory was the 34th Australian woman killed this year. A man named Ethan Midgley is charged with her murder in her home in Biggerel Waters in Queensland. He allegedly shot her to death. Mallory was 23 years old and raising her young son. She was adored by her family and friends and deserved to live a long, peaceful and happy life. Another child left without their mum because a man chose violence over walking away. Mallory's mum on social media said, "I love you. I want to hold you and not let you go. My beautiful sweetheart, my beautiful daughter." Mallory's friend Hayley has started a GoFundMe to help her family. Hayley says, "Our hearts are shattered following the tragic loss of our beautiful Mallory, whose life was taken far too soon in a devastating act of domestic violence," Hayley says. So you can find that link. It's on Sherele Moody's Instagram, but I will also put it possibly in the show notes on this episode. So rest in peace, Mallory Jane Roberts. If you are feeling like you need support after hearing this news, you can reach out to 1-800-RESPECT and call them on 1-800-737-732. They're a 24-hour counselling support line for those who have experienced violence at some point in their life or, are affected by violence or news in any way. If you are experiencing violence in your relationship and you need crisis support, please call DV Connect Women's Line. The number is 1-800-811-811. And if you are a man needing support or are at risk of perpetrating violence, please call DV Connect Men's Line 1-800-600-636. All right. I'm just going to share a couple of upcoming events that are happening this weekend. And also thank you to the person who texted in saying thank you for having a voice and addressing all these unfair issues. That's really beautiful. And thank you so much for listening. You guys are the reason why we're able to share all the things that we do share. And you should subscribe, non-sub. You can subscribe for as little as $40 a year. So some of the upcoming events that are happening this weekend. So on Friday night, there is an art show called Garden of Dreams happening at the station from 6 p.m, just around the corner from 4ZZZ. There will be lots of awesome Femme artists curated by Sophie Evans. And so then on the Saturday, on the 11th of July, Join Whimsy and Echo and Bouncer once again teaming up to host another medieval affair night. They'll have dress up, they'll have drag performances, there's a talent show, there's like a prize for best dress. I believe they do this every year as an alternative or after party for Abufest, which is the medieval festival happening on the weekend, which I will definitely be heading along to. So, very exciting times for those who, for nerds like me who care about Abufest, I guess. And then finally on Sunday, there is a protest against Pauline Hanson happening in Brisbane on Sunday, the 12th of July at 9:30 in King George Square. I've talked previously on all the kind of issues that I think that affect our MegaHerzzz listeners. I think this is a really important protest for people to head along to and, to just show that, Brisbane will not stand for the things that Pauline Hanson is saying. And if you are needing people to go along to with that, or you want some friends with you for a sign and banner painting event, this is being held on Thursday night at 6 p.m. at House Conspiracy in West End. If you want to, make some friends to go along with, if you want to, you just don't want to be alone while you're making some signs. But if you would like to subscribe to 4ZZZ, if you've liked what you've heard today, I think subscribing is a really awesome way for you to give back a little bit. There's some there's some structure changes happening with us subscribing to make it a little bit better for our listeners to get some tax deductible percentages back. I don't have it exactly on me, but if you've been listening to 4ZZZ throughout the last couple of weeks, you'll have heard a little bit about it. So definitely jump online and look that up. there's a few different areas of 4ZZZ you can subscribe to. So you can get a basic or a concession for $40. You can get a full subscriber for $80 a year, a passionate sub for $140 a year, and a super sub for $500 a year. And you get all these kind of extra cool, fun gifts and fun things happening with those subscription levels, depending on the one that you pick. So 100% jump online to 4ZZZ.org, see what's going on, and give back to our community. Thank you so much for listening, and I'm going to finish it on that.
Isn't that what feminism is about?